I am the greatest.
I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.
You won't do shit. Just stick and move. And waking you up and saying, now stick and move. Keep your hands up.
And today we are discussing probably the greatest fight of all time in the Thriller in Manila. And then we're going to go ahead and discuss our top 3 heavyweights of all time. So before we start with the subject at hand, Sam, tell me, before we show our cards, what have you always heard about this fight? This was a little bit before you and I were born. So what kind of, what was the hype you heard about it, the history, all that good stuff of the Thriller in Manila?
It was a trilogy, so
this was it.
I mean, what was exciting for me about this fight is that Joe Frazier, Joe Frazier had got knocked out by George Foreman.
Right.
Ali's trainer right next to me is saying it. You may hear him. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. The heavyweight champion is taking the mandatory 8 count, and Foreman is as poised as can be in a neutral corner.
You know what I'm saying? And Muhammad Ali beat George Foreman. And but this fight, I guess, at that time, I mean, it was a fight that people wanted to see the ending. They wanted to see who was better between these two champions. The fact that they fought in Manila was also huge. I mean, I knew it was going to be a good fight. But there was a lot of people rooting for Joe Frazier, man. I heard it. I heard the crowd. And I mean, what's his name? Frazier had 2 legends with him. He had, he had Eddie Futch and he had George Benton.
Yeah, Eddie Futch, exactly.
And Muhammad Ali was, I mean, dude, what I loved about this fight, the beginning before it even started was the way Muhammad Ali was interacting with the people in the crowd.
I saw that too. Yeah, man.
That was amazing. But leading up to this fight, of course, we're watching history. I knew it was going to be good. I haven't seen this fight. I don't remember. I knew the highlights and the outcome, but I don't remember watching this fight at all. I'm going to be honest. Dude, it was one of the best heavyweight fights I've ever seen in my life.
Here's the thing, bro. So the first fight took place in Madison Square Garden, and it was dubbed the fight of the century. And then part 2 happened, and then that was the super fight part. They called it the super fight, right? Super fight 2 or something like that. And then this one was a trilogy, Thriller in Manila. And, what made this fight so epic is the fact that Muhammad Ali, after his suspension from his protest, he fought a few... I don't want to say tomato cans, but few fights to get himself back into shape.
Tune-ups.
And then, tune-ups. There you go. And then took on Joe Louis. And then took on Joe Frazier. And at the Madison Square Garden, he would actually lose that fight, but it was very competitive. One of the greatest fights of all time. Also, we're gonna have to do an episode on that. It comes down to the Thriller in Manila, and I enjoyed that too. As for me, man, I'll be honest with you. My dad always talked about it. My dad was the biggest Ali fan, still to this day, probably his favorite athlete of all time. And I remember watching it they had an anniversary episode of it on ESPN Classic, over a decade ago. And then they rehashed it when Ali passed away, unfortunately. And it's always been in my lexicon of greatest fights of all time. And those 2 guys, I mean, we could have made this, although we're doing our subtopic today on the greatest heavyweights, we could have done this on the greatest rivalries, probably in sports history, because this definitely goes up there, in my opinion.
I agree 100%. But wasn't the first one where Frazier drops Ali with that hook? Is
Yes,
that
I
the first
believe so.
one?
Yeah.
Yeah, see,
Hmm.
because that's a famous clip that I've seen,
Right. Right.
and where he finally got caught by Joe Frazier, and I remember
Hmm.
Muhammad Ali getting real beat up, man. I
Hmm. Hmm.
remember that.
Hmm.
So this fight, I mean, Joe Frazier was ready, dude. He was ready,
I
and I didn't realize. Of course, I'm just I saw the fight again, rewatching the fight, dude. You know, people have to give respect to these 15-round fights, man. That is amazing.
Dude, watching 15 rounds exhausted me, and it
Yeah.
was nonstop action. To weigh what they weighed. So when they fought the first time, I have it here on my notes. When they fought at the Madison Square Garden, the first fight, Ali weighed 215 pounds and Frazier weighed 205.5 pounds. That in any other division is almost two classes behind each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, Frazier's about 5'9", 5'10", and Ali is about 6'3". I mean, talk about a mismatch in size. When they fought in Manila, Ali weighed 224.5 pounds, and Frazier was 215.5 pounds. And it just goes to show you that heavyweight, that's the reason why people love the heavyweight division, because, as long as you hit that 190 clearance, it doesn't matter. If you're 190, you could fight a 245-pound guy,
Hmm.
and the fight is on. So that's why this fight and the heavyweight division, in my opinion, always gets over glorified, because it's the ultimate man versus man. It does size doesn't matter at all. And this goes to show you that, I don't know how you felt about this, but Frazier, in my opinion, wow, he showed you why he's one of the greatest in this
Hmm.
fight,
Hmm.
even in a losing effort. So, let's get to it. I'm gonna post the fights. I'm gonna post the scorecards here, and on my scorecard, I had it 132, 134 for Frazier before he called it quits, which we'll get to in a minute. And I see on your card you had it 132, 135 also for Frazier. Not to
Yes.
mention, not to mention, our cards look pretty similar to one another. Yeah, there's like maybe one round that you and I differ from, two rounds that you and I differ from. So, what did you see in this fight? Tell me. Let's break down the first three rounds. First three rounds, you had Ali winning the first two out of three rounds. What did you see?
Um, Basically, Ali, he kept him away with that long, straight right, jab,
Hmm.
and the left hook. He just kept him away, kept him away, kept him away.
Right.
And it was, and Frazier was just, you know, just trying to get to the body, trying to land the hook, trying to get to the body. That's what he did the whole fight.
Hmm.
And Muhammad Ali, um, he 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 spent a lot of energy, man,
Hmm.
keeping Frazier away. And
Right.
as round two came, same thing. He was tagging him with the long right jab, boom, boom, with the left hook, boom. And it was just, he had him and had him and had him. But what I noticed right after the first round, I noticed it took a lot of energy out of Ali trying to hold Frazier, keep him at bay. It took a lot of energy. By the
Here's
third round, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
By
By the
the
third round.
third round, he made a mistake, and Kenny Norton, had made a comment about it. Ali was leaning too much to the ropes. He was staying in the corner, and Joe Frazier was just throwing, just hammering away with body shots, and that's why I had given Frazier that third round. But in my mind, I was thinking, how is Ali gonna win this fight looking as hard as he looks?
I actually had a different approach, and it's so funny because I had two out of the three rounds for Ali, and there was a moment in that second round where I told myself, if Ali keeps doing that, he had that amazing stiff jab that he was just giving
Oh
to
my
Frazier.
God, it was brutal.
He had every shot that he wanted. Every shot he got, he connected, and it was clean as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, I was remembering the history of it. I was like, doesn't Frazier quit in the 14th round? And my thought was, if Ali keeps throwing that jab, this fight is over in a round or two. There was, in the end of the first round, he already wobbled Frazier. Frazier almost went down in the first round.
Yeah,
Not to mention he almost went down again in the third round when you're saying Ali was playing that rope-a-dope on the third round, and then he just turns him around so elegantly. I have never seen a boxer be on the rope so tight, taking those hellacious body shots that Frazier was doing with this bully style fighting, with left, right, over and over. I mean, it looked exhausting the way Frazier fights that way. And all of a sudden,
he spins him around, dude.
Ali spins him around and just throws clean connection jabs. But the only reason why I gave that round to Frazier is because that turnaround happened too late. For 2.5 minutes, Frazier just had him on the corner, just throwing those body shots. But although I will say Ali, I mean that little turn that he put on Frazier, I have never seen anything so graceful in such a brutalic way in my life. So I had it the same as you did. I had it 2-3 Ali go, and I thought it was like, oh, this fight's over.
Yeah,
they go into the corner, and I already see Frazier like hunched over. And it was cool because in the third round, Ali gets up and he starts like pumping up the crowd.
Yeah.
After he gets cleaned up, he's like roaring up the crowd. So I was like, I think he's rope-a-doping Frazier here. Kind of reminding me a little bit of, well,
with the Foreman fight.
Yeah, with the Foreman fight, rope-a-doping. But he was trying to do it again to Frazier, but I don't think it worked on Frazier. We'll talk about that in a minute. And kind of like when Canelo fought, who was the guy that he fought where he was just punching his arm and then broke his bicep tendon? You remember that guy, the big tall guy for the 168 belt a couple years ago?
Was it
Find a blank, man.
No,
it was the other guy. He was undefeated. Well, anyways, he did that, right? He just punched his arm until the bicep ripped off and the guy couldn't even throw a jab anymore on Canelo. He tries that again against Bivol and it just did not work. He thought he could bust his sides up, his shoulders up, open up the guard, but Bivol was just too heavy for him. And I think Ali was bringing that, what he did to Foreman, to Frazier. He was like, I'll just rope-a-dope him. And I think it was too much. What do you think of that assessment?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think Joe Frazier knew what Ali was trying to do, but I mean, Ali fooled the crowd in the commentary. The guys commenting were like, oh, Ali shouldn't do this, Ali shouldn't do that. He shouldn't lean on the ropes. He shouldn't let Frazier just hammer down on his body. But I think Ali knew exactly what he was doing, man.
Well, that's actually the myth, There's plenty of
that's what it looks like.
Yeah, there's plenty of documentaries. Right? Yeah, of course. So it's always Monday morning quarterback, right? I mean, we're doing it too after like what, almost 50 years later. So here's the thing, bro. The next 3 rounds, I had Ali for 4, and the rest, all the way down to round 11, I gave all straight Frazier because exactly what you said. And I noticed on your side, you only gave 4 to Ali as well, and you gave 7 to
Ali.
But other than that, it was pretty much Frazier.
Yeah, pretty much Frazier all the way down.
So what did you see all the way down?
It was me. Look, we got to be honest here. The punches to the body are no less than the punches to the face when it comes to a point system. Joe Frazier was landing a lot of body shots and a lot of uppercuts and inside the box. And I gave him credit for being the aggressor. I gave him credit for hitting all those body shots. I mean, yes, Ali had some punches he threw in. But by that time, Joe Frazier had already landed like 20 body shots.
He did.
So he worked him, man. He worked him. Joe Frazier was the aggressor the entire fight. It was a landslide.
If you and I, we all our earlier episodes, and even before we started this podcast, you and I have always been a fan about activity, whether it's doing fights or in the ring. And Frazier was going forward. I mean, he was bullying forward the entire time. It blew my mind. I know I already said this, but I can't believe the endurance he had to keep that up. I mean, it was just nonstop, man. He was nonstop while Ali was keeping his guard up on the ropes for a majority of that fight. So it was an impressive feat to see until those last rounds. Let me ask you this before we get to the last rounds. If this was a 12-round fight, you think the fight would have looked different?
Yes, it would have.
Because
I think that Ali would have turned that round 13 and 14 into round 12 and 11 if he knew this was a 12-round fight. You have to understand too. Muhammad Ali did a lot of things that are illegal today. He puts a hand in his face. Yeah, he puts a hand in his face. You can't do that. He was grabbing a lot behind the head. You can't do that. And he was doing something else. He was pushing away, and you can't do that. And Ali was doing all those things, but that was before the rules today. But yes, I think it would have been different. If it was a 12-round fight, I think Ali would have had a better game plan with Angelo Dundee, and they would have turned it up in the last championship rounds.
Here's why I don't think it will. Because Frazier, the reason why, in my opinion, he gave up those last couple of rounds, he burned himself out. That bully style is aggressive, and it's a lot. I think he got tired the 13th, 14th round, 12th, 13th, 14th round, and I think that endurance would have translated if it was a 12-round fight. I think that endurance would have held up, and I think it would have been a completely different looking fight if it was a natural 12-round fight. I think Ali would have had a different approach. I don't think he would have done rope-a-dope at all. And I think he would have tried to knock him out early on, like the way I thought he should have in those early rounds with that stiff jab that Joe Frazier had no answers for.
Yeah, destroyed the left side of his face. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially in those early rounds. I mean, Ali, like I said, had every punch available to him. He connected high percentages in that early part of the fight. And I think if it was a basic 12-round fight, he would have stuck to that game plan and knocked out Frazier early, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation. But that's just me. Because he knows that style that Frazier has is too much for 12 to 15 rounds, especially 15. So let's wrap up the last 3 rounds. I had it 9-10 Ali, and then 13-14 I had straight up Ali. Clearly, there was a point where I almost gave Ali a 10-8 round in that 14th round, because that big old knot that he gave Frazier on the left side of his head, unbelievable, blew me away. Actually, that was the 13th round, and I was like, man, should I give that a 10-8 because it was completely one-sided? Yeah. Well, how did you feel about those last 2 rounds? Because I see that you also gave it the same score.
Yeah, you saw the end coming. I mean, when he landed that right hand in the hook and it hurt Frazier, and you saw Frazier kind of stumble, it was going to happen. It was going to happen. Ali just turned it up, and he was gassed out, man. And as much as Frazier wanted to keep going, you saw him jumping up and down, great condition. But it was just so much you could take from that right jab, straight, right hand that Ali has. Just so much, man. and it was
dude,
over.
It was a phenomenal fight. You know, I knew what the ending was coming, and even then, I honestly think if Frazier would have gone in the 15th round and just moved around the ring, like Floyd Mayweather style, just used the ring for defense, I think he would have won that fight.
Me too.
Probably by a point or two, because he did so much damage early on. But if you watch the history of this, Frazier said that he could not even get up, that he probably would have died in the ring in that 15th round if it would have gone. And Muhammad Ali said the same thing. He was like, I was happy that he called it quits because I was about 10 seconds away from calling quits myself. That's how intense this fight was. So you have any final words on this Thriller in Manila before we transition?
I love the fight so much, and I'm going to say this right here. It's one of the greatest heavyweight fights I've ever seen in my life, and probably is. But I still want to see, more and more. Like I've already seen the George Foreman Ali fight, and I've seen some other, Ali and Wepner, and some other fights that he had. But man, that's why he's the greatest of all time, bro.
Well, speaking of greatest of all time, let's go ahead and transition. All right. So, guys, tell us what you think about the Thriller in Manila in our comments. Are we right? Are we wrong? Are we crazy? Did we see a different fight? Let us know. And right now, we're going to go ahead and transition to our top 3 greatest heavyweights. I got to be honest with you, man. After seeing that fight, it's probably my favorite fight of all time. Now that I've seen it as a grown adult man.
Right.
Yeah, it's probably the greatest fight I've ever seen. Let's do greatest rivalries, but we committed to top three heavyweights of all time. So I'll give you the honor, Sam. Give me your number 3. Who is your number 3 guy?
My number 3 is Joe Louis. My number 3 is Joe Louis. Joe Louis, I mean, this guy, what I love about Joe Louis, he was fighting monsters. He was fighting, the Walcotts, the Billy Khans. He was fighting the monsters. It was a different time, smaller gloves. These guys were fighting outdoors. There was how do you say it? There was mafia behind it.
There was.
They had to deal with the mob, and I think that what he's done for the sport and the people he fought, man, they were animals. They would fight, dude, with no roof, under the sun, and it was just a different time. Joe Louis became a champion at an early age. He, pretty much passed the crown to Rocky Marciano at 37 years of age. I mean, the guy was just a complete monster, man. He has a great history. I mean, I can go back all night talk about the fights that he's had, but he's an icon that a lot of people follow, and he's in everybody's, when it comes to history of heavyweights, he's in there. So I got Joe Louis as my number 3 best heavyweight of all time.
Look, I can't argue that at all, because honestly, he's also my number 3. You stole it, man.
Oh, all right.
Look, the Brown Bomber. I mean, this is one of the greatest boxers who ever lived. My dad would tell me stories about this guy. My dad's also a big, huge fight guy, especially back in the day. But like, you're right. He did fight Walcott. He fought Schmeling twice. They did a whole movie on that. He fought, who was it? Bivens. I mean, this is a guy.
Jersey Joe Walcott.
Yeah, Joe Walcott. He had 25 defenses of his heavyweight crown. I mean, that is it's something that a Hollywood script would be like, no, you're making it, it's too much. Like you're over exaggerating. And you're right. The conditions at the time, those gloves that they had back then were like rocks. After 2 rounds and all the sweat that accumulated in there, they turned into rocks. And the wars that he went into, I mean, he was 66-3. He had a 52 knockout. That's one of the highest, if I'm not mistaken, the highest knockout ratio of all time, with Rocky Marciano. So percentage knockout ratio. So not to overindulge on Joe Louis because you spoke about him too, but I have him also as my number 3. I'm sorry, you're number 3. I have him also my number 3 because, like you said, man, he fought the monsters back in the day. He fought the guy Schmeling that was the untouchable guy, and he took revenge. To me, what makes a great boxer is if you go down, getting your revenge. Like Ali, when he lost to Frazier that first time, what did he do? He got revenge, and then he settled it again in the Thriller Manila, coincidentally, and so on and so on and so on. It's always about that comeback. Marquez and Pacquiao, so on and so on. So that's why I have Joe Louis as my number 3.
All right.
We're on the
that's
same
good.
page.
Yes.
All right. Now I hope you don't steal my number 2, or else we got a problem. All right. So who is your number 2?
The Rocky Marciano, baby. Rocky Marciano is my number 2. You know why? Because he beat the guys that beat Joe Louis.
Right. He beat Walcott.
He knocked out Archie Moore. I mean, this guy was 5'10", I think he was. Small heavyweight dude. And he had a great chin. And he undefeated, brother. You know, if it wasn't for that plane crash or that, you know, I mean, the guy was 49-0. I mean, he was knocking out everybody. He was knocking out everybody. And in small stature, he was just a bully in the ring. The guy made history. And you look, they got the iconic punch. Who was it that he knocked out? Was it Walcott? I don't know who it was. Or you see the guy's face. Who was it?
Yeah, I think it was Ezra Charles, if I'm not mistaken.
Ezra Charles.
Oh, no.
I mean,
or was it Scarza? La Scarza.
I don't remember, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's this. I mean, the guy that was a pictures to let everybody know that this guy is a mauler. This guy is a beast. This guy can punch, and he was the boogeyman, bro. This guy was a monster. He was. He for me, he's my number 2 only because he beat the guys that beat Joe Louis, and that's why I got Rocky Marciano. You know, my number 2 best heavyweight of all time and undefeated.
Well, I'm pretty sure I know what your number 1 is, but I had Rocky Marciano number 2 also. So I think you and I have the same list. But just to have fun, I'm going to change my number 2 right on the spot. So I'm going off the top of my head. Okay. So just for record, my number 2 is also Rocky Marciano because you got to respect the undefeated record, you know? But for the sake of this conversation, just to make it a little bit interesting, I'm going to go with Larry Holmes, man. The Eastern Assassin, brother. I mean, from what? 78 or 79 to 85? I mean, he was a nonstop champ. He ended a lot of careers. Unfortunately, even also Muhammad Ali. But he beat who? Ken Norton. He beat Ernie Shavers. He beat Cooney, Witherspoon.
He retired Ali.
He retired Ali. Very good. And, you know, he even tried to make comebacks. He tried to go against Mike Tyson when we all knew he was shot. He took out Mike Tyson when Mike Tyson was a boogeyman.
Didn't he have like the best jab in heavyweight history?
Dude, his left was unbelievable.
Oh my gosh, bro.
I hated that Don King, even though Don King was a promoter for Ali as well, and coincidentally Mike Tyson. I hated what Don King did to Larry Holmes. He punched him out. He made him fight longer than he should have. And he took advantage of Larry Holmes's I don't want to say lack of education, but he just took advantage of his intellect and obviously his body for the sake of money, which of course Larry Holmes could have denied himself. But I mean, Don King ruined what was a pretty damn good record until then. And I don't know, for me, Larry Holmes, there was a time where I thought he was going to be unbeatable. I watch his old fights. I'm like, how did this guy ever lose? And it was just straight up father time. He was beaten down, and so anyways, so that's why he is my number 2, Larry Holmes. You got any thoughts on that?
No. I mean, I love that pick, man. Larry Holmes.
Yeah.
And it's not about records either, man.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're giving our opinion, because I'm not gonna lie. When you told me, hey, we're gonna say who was our top three heavyweights. There's one guy, bro, that I love so much
Mm-hmm.
that he was a great fighter. He was the warrior, and that was
Mm-hmm.
Evander Holyfield, bro.
I thought
And
about him too, man. I
yeah,
thought about
bro.
him too, man.
Yeah, honestly, he's right there. He is
Yeah,
right there. But
he is right there.
the only reason that I don't got these 90s fighters and 2000 fighters and all that, the only reason is because back then, those rules and the way the country was
Right,
against, the black fighters like Joe Louis and, all them,
right,
the history.
right. Like, yeah, Shelly, yeah.
The world was against him. There was, the people wanted to see you killed.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't rules like we have rules today. That's why for me, these heavyweights, Joe Louis, all these guys, Ezra Chow, all them guys, those were real warriors,
Right,
real
right,
fighters, and that's
right,
why it's hard for me to have somebody today on top of these guys. But go ahead.
right. Well, look, I'll finish. I'll finish with this on Larry Holmes. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was 47 or 48-0 until he lost to Michael Spinks as a heavyweight. You know how hard it is to maintain an undefeated record in the heavyweight division with those big old bombs. That is literally the division where anybody can win because those fists that connect from a 200 plus pounder is a different level than welterweight or featherweight, bantamweight, or anything like that. I mean, a punch is a punch, of course. I won't disrespect that. But to go 48-0 and beating monsters, Marvis Frazier and so on, just goes to show you the level that that
Larry
Larry
Holmes.
Holmes was, at least for me. So from there, let's go ahead and transition to
All right.
our number one, which I think is going to be consensus as well. Who is your number one, my man?
It's Muhammad Ali, man. It's
Of
Muhammad
course,
Ali.
of
He
course.
is the greatest heavyweight boxer of all time. The guy walks the walk and talks the talk. This guy gives you everything. This guy involves the crowd. His interactions with the people,
Right.
what he stood for his people, and what he did in the ring. This guy, he was a great fighter. There's no denying. He had the speed, he had the skill, he had the mindset to overcome and to win.
Right.
Fighting all over the globe, fighting people
Mm-hmm.
that even his own team thought he could not beat.
George Foreman,
And him, yeah, George Foreman. The people. What I heard when I heard the fight, when I was listening, the people were rooting for Joe Frazier. You know what I'm saying? And he just turned the whole crowd. This guy was Muhammad Ali, proved himself in and out of the ring, and he was known worldwide, pre-internet.
Right.
This guy was known worldwide, man, and he was a champion, and he will always be, in my opinion, the king when it
Yeah.
comes to boxing.
Look, listen. To me, he's the second greatest athlete of all time, behind Michael Jordan. Okay. I could, if somebody told me no, he's got to be number one, I'd be okay with that. And he personifies what boxing was and should be. And you're right, inside and outside the ring. I heard those chants for Joe Frazier in Manila. You and I lived in Manila for a little bit.
Yeah.
And this, I've been to that Coliseum where they fought at. It's called, or not the Coliseum today. I probably said it wrong. I apologize. That's what it's called now. But listen, man, he at one time, because of his political differences, became one of the most hated people in America / the world because of that. And he did not let that hold him down. He fought that to the inside and outside the ring. He brought his politics into both ranges. And the fact that he stepped up, took on all the heavy hitters that nobody thought he should fight. Nobody wanted him to fight Joe Frazier. What was it, 2 or 3 fights after his suspension? But he did it. Frazier, at the time, was known as the scariest brawler in the world of all time. He fought Sonny Liston when people thought he was too young. And we know the history on that. And he just took on every challenger every single time. Ken Norton, like I said, George, for all the big iconic fight. If you make a top 10 list of the most iconic fights of all time, he has 5 or 6 of them off of the top 10. So, but the most iconic part of him is what he did outside the ring. Because that changed society. He took on the hate, and like the way you and I talked about how Ali turned Frazier in that 3rd round so beautifully, so
man.
elegantly, so masterfully. Sorry, that's what he did with the people of the public opinion. Why? He got the respect from those fights that he put everything on the line, that people had no choice whether they hated him on his politics or not, to be like, man, that guy is just a warrior, and I have no choice but to respect him. And maybe I'll listen to what he has to say. I'll be open-minded to what he has to say. And you know what, man? He changed the world, not only in boxing, but the entire world. So that's why I have him also as my number 1. Do you have any final thoughts before we sign off?
I can't wait to do more history fights. You know what I mean? Because believe it or not, it's opening, a bigger world to what the history of boxing has. Right. And I can't wait to do another episode of some other fights in our history, in all divisions. But I enjoyed this one. I can't wait to watch, do homework on another fight that we can do next. And I just, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed this conversation. Muhammad Ali, man, he's what boxing's all about and should be about. And that's why he's the GOAT.
I'm with you, man. And with that, I'll let you have that last word. Let's go ahead and sign off. To our people that are commenting on our TikTok and our YouTube and our Instagram, those are great conversation. Derek Vasquez, I'm shouting you out because you're putting me on calling me out on blast, and I respect that. But for everybody else, leave those comments on TikTok, YouTube. We're all under the Stick and Move podcast. If you want to listen to us audio, Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts under the Stick and Move Fighting podcast. So leave us comments there, and also subscribe, guys. And until then, don't forget to stick and move, baby.
I am the greatest. I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.